Oscar Greeley Glendenning Hammerstein, better known as Oscar Hammerstein II, was born into show business almost 60 years ago. He grew up here in New York City, studied at Columbia University, planned to become a lawyer. But the show business blood of his grandfather, his father, and his uncle was too strong. At the age of 24, Oscar Hammerstein had his first show on Broadway. He's been represented there ever since. And in recent years, he and composer Dick Rogers have broken just about every theatrical record with shows like Oklahoma, South Pacific, and The King and I. In 1929, Oscar married Dorothy Blanchard, an actress who later became a highly successful interior decorator. They'll be married 26 years tomorrow. The Hammersteins live in a townhouse here in Manhattan, but whatever free time they have, they spend at their farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where they love to gather with their 5 children and I think at the last count it was 7 grandchildren. Good evening, Oscar.
Hello, Ed.
Did I get the family count right?
Well, counting step-grandchildren, I have 9.
Aha.
And we have another one coming. And there may be still another. They don't tell you everything, you know.
Well, Oscar, this is the kind of weather when we should be enjoying the farm, isn't it?
I like to be down there in all kinds of weather, Ed. I do most of my work there, and we have most of our fun there.
Tell me, are you one of these gentleman farmers?
Oh, no. I'm a very commercial farmer, Ed. I'm raising a herd of Angus for breeding purposes and for selling. And call me a farmer, but not a gentleman.
All right. Oscar, coming from a theatrical family, I suppose you got plenty of professional advice when you decided to go into show business, didn't you?
Yes, the first advice I got was not to go in. My father, he didn't want me to go in at all. And then, this is my grandfather.
Yes?
I don't think he cared one way or the other. This is my uncle Arthur, and
yes.
He helped me a great deal. He put me on the map and really started me in show business. This is a picture from him in 1923, and it's addressed to Bernard Shaw Hammerstein from his uncle Arthur. Very encouraging.
Yes, very.
He did something else that was great for me. He introduced me to this man, Otto Harbach, my first collaborator.
Yes.
And if I know anything about my business as librettist, I learned 90% of it from Otto here. He's a great man and a great friend.
Well, Oscar, getting up to date a little, what's in the works with Rogers and Hammerstein?
Well, we're working on a play called Pipe Dream, and we're going into rehearsal in September. It stars Helen Traubel and Bill Johnson, directed by Harold Claremont, and it's adapted from John Steinbeck's book, Sweet Thursday.
Yes.
The rest of our activities for the balance of the summer relate to Oklahoma. We're sending overseas a company to be in the Salute to France, and then we're getting ready, putting on the finishing touches of our picture, Oklahoma, filmed in a new process called Tardeo. Quite a wonderful thing, which makes you feel you're involved in the scene and in the numbers. Well, it's a great thing.
Tell me, Oscar, did you and Dick watch very much of the shooting of Oklahoma?
Oh, yes, we did, because it was our first production, and we wanted to see that it was done right if we could, and we wanted to learn something about the business, and we did. Well, one day out on location, one of the state troopers of Arizona came up and watched the shooting, and then he turned to me and said, well, this looks like a pretty good picture, but why are they using all that old music?
Oscar, I've been admiring your study. Did Dorothy decorate it for you?
Yes, she certainly did. You know, Dorothy retired from professional decoration about 2 years ago, and since then she's now keeping her hand in, redecorating all the rooms in our 2 houses.
Tell me, Oscar, how many songs have you written?
Oh, I guess close to 1,000.
Well, I suppose the second 1,000 should be easier, huh?
No, they're harder, I think. You know, I've heard that there's no limit to the number of ways you can say I love you to a girl, but I'm beginning to think there is a limit, and I found it. It's very hard.
And that's the main reason it gets more difficult.
Yes, it is.
Good evening, Dorothy.
Good evening, Ed, and thank you for the roses you sent me. They're beautiful. I put them upstairs so the heat wouldn't kill them.
Well, happy anniversary eve to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, Oscar seems like a pretty mild-mannered sort of individual. I suppose you haven't had too much temperament around the house in the 26 years, have you?
Well, a little bit, but not too much. Just the right amount.
Uh-huh. Tell me, do you have much trouble with him on opening nights?
Yes, I have a lot of trouble with him on opening nights. He's very bad-tempered and nervous and irritable, and he thinks if the scene takes too long to change, if it takes more than about 5 seconds, he thinks it's taken 5 minutes, and he starts to mutter, and people around get worried because he's making a noise, and they don't know who he is, and they wish he'd shut up.
Oscar told me that you had quit the interior decorating business, but tell me, what does a decorator buy for herself?
Well, she isn't limited anymore by clients' wishes, so she can buy anything as silly as she likes. So I bought a few silly things. Do you want to see some?
Yes.
All right. This is Monkey's very silly. It reminds us of somebody, but I won't tell you who it reminds us of.
I'll bet I could guess.
Yeah. And monkeys are getting very smart all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And then these little boxes, they're lap desks. I find those and I have them made into tables. I put them on a brass base
Yeah.
or a wooden base.
Yeah.
And then out here, would you like to come out? This is a serious business. This is what I really collect, seriously. This is lotus pattern Lowestoft, and it's very beautiful. It's lovely pink. And I wish you could see the color of it. And it's very hard to find. And this is another silly piece. This is what they call a conversation piece.
Oh, wonderful.
And you can sit in any one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you should really have 3 people.
Yes.
But it works very well at a cocktail party. We don't have many of those, but...
Where'd you find that, or did you have it
I
made?
found that on 3rd Avenue. One of those bargains where you think something's so terribly cheap for $25, and then by the time you have it all redone and everything else, it would have been cheaper if you hadn't found it on 3rd Avenue.
Good.
Would you like to see some more? Would you like to hear about the screen?
Yes.
And this is a screen Oscar bought me in Paris. It's an 8-fold screen, and it was very difficult to hang. And the experts who came up to hang it were talking for about half an hour and saying it was much too heavy to hang and on a plaster wall. And then I wasn't taking much notice, and suddenly I said, well, supposing you unhook all the panels and hang them one at a time, then it would only be the weight of one panel. So that's what they did. It was a big success.
It's a lovely thing.
Yes. Oscar bought it in Paris.
Oscar,
Yes,
I
Ed?
always remember a line in one of the songs you wrote, the one about you have to be taught to hate. What were you thinking about when you wrote that?
Well, of course, the line emerged from the plot of the play of South Pacific and the characters, as every good song should. But I was happy to get a chance to treat that theme and get it off my chest. I do think that probably the worst thing that parents ever do to children is to teach them to hate, to teach them prejudice. You wouldn't ever find a parent willing to inculcate poison that would make his child physically sick. But teaching a child to hate, teaching him to have prejudice, makes him mentally sick. And he stays mentally sick all his life unless he has other very strong influences come in to counteract it. I think we learn to hate when we're very young. And I think you've got to be taught. I don't think it comes natural.
You certainly said it in that particular piece, too. Dorothy, tell me, do you have any particular favorite that Oscar has written?
Yes, my favorite is Getting to Know You from The King and I. And I think that teaches the same thing in a softer way, although I like the other one, too.
You know, I begin to suspect that this man is rather serious in his work.
Well, as long as it doesn't show too much. I think he is, too.
Oscar, can you remember the first song you ever wrote?
Yes, it was in a varsity show at Columbia called Home James. And I wrote the song with a collaborator who became a big real estate man and a composer who is now a famous doctor. And the song told a story about an Irishman who went into the opera and saw a girl he knew, and he sang Annie McGinnis Pavlova. I'll stop you from putting one over. It was in Hogan's back alley, you learned the bacchanally, and now you're the pride of the Ballyruss. They call you a zephyr, a fairy, an elf. Go put on your flannels, take care of yourself. For the costume you wearin's a shame to old Erin. Oh, Annie, you'd better go home. I danced in that number.
Did you?
Yes, I wore a leopard skin. That had nothing to do with the song.
Oscar, I saw you quoted the other day as saying that the world was suffering from a sort of anarchy. Was that right?
Yes, I think it is. I think that while no man could run on an anarchist ticket and become elected as a mayor or a dog catcher, nevertheless, we seem to subscribe to anarchy in international affairs. We resist government. Many of us resist even the United Nations, which is a mild form of law and order. And many think it's weak and should be abolished. I think it's weak and should be made much stronger. And I think it's our only hope for peace. Law, as General MacArthur has said, as many conservative people as well as liberal people have said. I would like to see this get underway soon.
You'd like to see a police force too, would you?
Yes, you have to have a police force. And I realize how difficult all this is, but it's not as difficult as what they're trying to do. Run the world without any form of law, without any force to bind the contracts we make.
Oscar, let's go back to show business for a minute. Do you think television is doing justice to show business?
Yes, I do. Of course, I'm a television fan, and I get in a good many arguments at dinner table with people who are a little above television. They won't have one in their house. They're afraid that it'll influence the children in the wrong way. I think it's much better for children than penny dreadfuls and bad comic books. I think also that television has educated voters by their panel and quiz shows, and by shows like yours, if I may say so.
Thank you.
Another thing I find about television in relation to the theater, when the movies first started, they drained the theater of directors and authors and actors, whereas television gives back talent to us. We're beginning to find writers in television. We're beginning to find actors and directors and using them. I think television's great.
Well, thank you very much, Oscar, and thank you, Dorothy, for letting us come and visit you tonight.
Good night.
Good night, Ed.
We've enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Sure.
In person, I mean.
Yes, so do
I
I.
hope so, too.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Ed.
Good night.